My name is Moran, and I have spent the better part of 3 solar cycles studying the bizarre habits of various species across our galaxy. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I witnessed aboard the Galactic Council Station Omega-7 last rotation. I was there in my official capacity as a cultural observer for the Nexus Coalition, armed with my standard-issue documentation equipment, and what I foolishly believed was an open mind. The humans were scheduled to arrive for their first major diplomatic summit, and frankly most of us expected the usual boring proceedings. Treaties, trade agreements, the occasional territorial dispute over mining rights. You know, standard galactic politics. What we did not expect was for their transport vessel to dock with what appeared to be a mobile zoo. The airlock hissed open, and out stepped the human delegation. Normal enough, I suppose. Suppose. Based, wearing those ridiculous fabric coverings they insist on draping over their bodies. But then, to the absolute bewilderment of every dignitary present, they began unloading creatures. Living, breathing, 4-legged creatures. Admiral Vashi of the Zorathian delegation was the first to voice what we were all thinking. His 3 heads turned in perfect synchronization. A feat that would have been impressive if not for the sheer confusion plastered across all 6 of his eyes. By the 7 moons of Zorax, he bellowed, his voice carrying that distinctive metallic ring all Zorathians possess. What in the name of the cosmic void are those things? Commander Tom Marley, the human delegation leader, stepped forward with what I can only describe as the patience of someone who has had this conversation before. Many times before. These are our companion animals, Admiral, dogs, cats, and a few birds. They provide emotional support and companionship during long-term space missions. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the station's life support systems humming in the background. Then General Krafnog started laughing. Now, for those unfamiliar with klaxon physiology, their laughter sounds like a malfunctioning plasma conduit, mixed with the death cry of a quantum resonator. It is not pleasant, but laugh he did, his massive bulk shaking with what I can only assume was mirth. Emotional support? He wheezed between guffaws, his voice echoing through the docking bay. You brought livestock for emotional support? I watched the humans exchange glances, and I swear I saw something flash across their faces. Not anger exactly. More like the look a professor gets when a student asks a particularly ignorant question. Patient, but with an undercurrent of something I could not quite identify at the time. They are not livestock, Commander Marley said carefully, his tone remaining diplomatic despite what I now recognize were rather insulting questions. They are family members. This statement caused another wave of confusion among the assembled delegates. Admiral Vashi leaned forward, genuinely curious. Family members. But they are clearly a different species. How can non-sentient creatures be considered family? One of the humans, a female named Amy Kowalski, stepped forward with a large brown and black creature walking beside her. The animal moved with a fluid grace that was somehow both relaxed and alert simultaneously. This is Rex, she said simply, placing her hand on the creature's head. The animal looked up at her with what I can only describe as absolute devotion. Rex is a German shepherd, she continued, apparently oblivious to our collective confusion. He has been my companion for 5 years. He knows when I am stressed, alerts me to potential dangers, and provides comfort during difficult situations. General Krafnog snorted, a sound like steam escaping from an overheated engine. So you brought a biological alarm system that occasionally makes you feel better. How wonderfully inefficient. The mockery continued for several more minutes, with various delegates making increasingly creative jokes about human weakness and dependency on what they viewed as inferior life forms. I dutifully recorded it all, making notes about interspecies cultural misunderstandings. How utterly catastrophically wrong we all were. The formal introductions began shortly after the initial, let us call it, cultural exchange. Brandon Torres, a tall human male with what appeared to be prematurely graying fur on his head, approached our group with another 4-legged creature in tow. This one was smaller than Rex, with black and white markings, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "This is Luna," Torres announced, his voice carrying that peculiar human mixture of pride and affection. "She is a border collie, highly intelligent, excellent at problem-solving, and incredibly loyal." Judge Quintara, the official council representative for this diplomatic farce, tilted her elongated cranium in what passes for curiosity among her species. The Etherian judge had presided over thousands of interspecies negotiations, and her patience was legendary. Her patience, unfortunately, did not extend to what she clearly viewed as biological baggage. "Mr. Torres," she said, her voice carrying the weight of official authority, "while we appreciate the human's attachment to these organisms, we must question the logic of transporting non-productive life forms across interstellar distances. Surely your resources could be better allocated to actual diplomatic necessities." Commander Marley stepped forward before Torres could respond, and I noticed something interesting. Both Rex and Luna immediately shifted their positions, moving closer to their respective humans, not frantically, not obviously, but with a subtle awareness that suggested they were monitoring the situation. "Judge Quintara," Marley began, "with respect, these animals serve multiple functions beyond companionship. They provide psychological stability for our crew during long-duration missions, assist with stress management, and have been proven to improve overall team cohesion." Admiral Vashi let out what I can only describe as a polite scoff. "Psychological stability, Commander? Our species have been traversing the void between stars for millennia without requiring emotional crutches. Perhaps humans are simply not suited for the rigors of space exploration if you require constant comfort from inferior life forms." The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop several degrees, though I am certain the environmental controls remained stable. The humans exchanged those looks again, the kind that suggested internal communication without actual speech. Fascinating, really, though at the time I attributed it to simple social bonding. Moran, my junior colleague and someone whose arrogance often exceeded his intelligence, chose that moment to insert himself into the conversation. "If I may observe," he said, his voice dripping with the condescension that made him so insufferable at department meetings, "it appears humans have developed an unhealthy emotional dependency on creatures that cannot even contribute to their own survival. From an evolutionary perspective, this seems counterproductive." Amy Kowalski looked down at Rex, then back at Moran with an expression I now recognize as barely contained irritation. "Rex," she said quietly, "sit." The animal immediately lowered his hindquarters to the deck plating, eyes never leaving his human's face. "Stay," she continued, then walked approximately 10 meters away. Rex remained motionless, though his attention remained focused on Kowalski, with laser-like precision. "Down," she called from across the bay. Rex lowered himself to the deck, still maintaining perfect attention. General Krafnog chuckled, the sound echoing off the metal walls. "Basic conditioning responses. My maintenance drones display more complex behavioral patterns." Torres apparently decided to demonstrate further. "Luna," he said, pointing to a small object on the far side of the docking bay. "Fetch." The black and white creature immediately bounded across the space, picked up what appeared to be a data pad someone had dropped, and returned it to Torres's outstretched hand. The entire sequence took perhaps 15 seconds. "Impressive programming," Ambassador Zelix admitted, though her tone suggested she was being polite rather than genuinely impressed. "Though I fail to see how this justifies the resource expenditure of interstellar transport." What happened next should have been our first warning that we were missing something fundamental about these relationships. A maintenance alert chimed through the station's communication system, followed by an announcement about a minor hull breach in Section 7, requiring immediate attention. Standard procedure, routine occurrence, nothing to worry about. Except both Rex and Luna immediately stood up, their entire posture changing from relaxed attention to what I can only describe as high alert. Their ears moved forward, their bodies tensed, and they began scanning the area around their humans with obvious concern. "What are they doing?" Judge Quintara asked, genuinely puzzled. "They heard the alert," Kowalski explained, as if this was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "They know it means potential danger, so they are assessing the situation." Moran laughed, That grating sound he made when he thought he was being particularly clever. They are reacting to sound patterns, simple auditory conditioning. My food processor responds to voice commands more efficiently. The humans said nothing, but I noticed they did not move to correct their animal's behavior. Rex and Luna maintained their alert posture until the all-clear signal sounded several minutes later. Only then did they relax, returning to their previous casual demeanor. Remarkable conditioning, Admiral Vashi admitted grudgingly, though still hardly necessary for diplomatic missions. If only we had paid more attention to that word conditioning. If only we had asked ourselves what exactly these creatures had been conditioned for, we would find out soon enough. The attack came during what the humans call lunch break, though why any species would voluntarily interrupt important diplomatic proceedings to consume nutrition is beyond my understanding. The formal sessions had been suspended, and most delegates were scattered throughout the station's various recreational and sustenance facilities. I was in the observation lounge with several other cultural attachés, documenting the peculiar way humans seem to share their food with their animal companions, when the first explosion rocked Station Omega-7. The lights flickered. Emergency klaxons began wailing, and the pleasant hum of normal station operations was replaced by the distinctly unpleasant sound of hull breaches and failing systems. Through the reinforced viewports, I could see 3 unmarked vessels of clearly pirate configuration attached to our docking ports like parasitic organisms. All personnel to emergency stations. Admiral Drahorn's voice crackled over the communication system, though the signal was already degrading. We are under attack by hostile forces. Repeat, we are under attack. The next few minutes descended into complete chaos. Emergency bulkheads began sealing automatically, trapping delegates and crew members in whatever sections they happened to occupy. The station's defensive systems, which should have been more than adequate to repel a few pirate vessels, seemed to be failing in rapid succession. Later investigation would reveal that the pirates had somehow obtained detailed schematics of our security protocols. Someone had sold us out, but at the time, all we knew was that our supposedly impregnable station was being systematically dismantled by a handful of raiders. I found myself swept along with a group of panicking civilians toward what someone claimed was a secure area in Cargo Bay 12. The corridors filled with the acrid smoke of burning electronics and the distinctive smell of fear from a dozen different species. Among the crowd I spotted Amy Kowalski and Brandon Torres, still accompanied by their animal companions. While everyone else was running in various states of terror, the humans moved with grim purpose, their creatures maintaining formation around them like some sort of organic escort. We reached Cargo Bay 12 just as the emergency doors sealed behind us, trapping approximately 30 beings in what we hoped would be a safe refuge. The bay was filled with standard diplomatic supplies, storage containers, and enough provisions to last several rotations if necessary. For about 10 minutes, we actually believed we might be safe. Then the pirates cut through the emergency doors with industrial plasma torches. 6 armed raiders entered the bay, their weapons trained on our huddled group. They wore the typical pirate uniform of mismatched armor and threatening postures, led by what appeared to be a Thraxian mercenary, whose scars suggested considerable combat experience. "Nobody moves, nobody gets hurt," the lead pirate announced in standard Galactic Pidgin, his voice distorted by a vocal modifier. "We are here for the diplomatic pouches and any valuable cargo. Cooperate, and you will live to file insurance claims." The assembled civilians whimpered appropriately, which seemed to satisfy the pirates' expectations. They began moving through our group, demanding valuables and checking identification tags. That was when I noticed something extraordinary. Rex, the German shepherd, had positioned himself directly between Amy Kowalski and the nearest pirate. Not obviously, not aggressively, but with subtle precision that placed his body as a barrier between potential threat and his human. His posture remained calm, almost casual, but his eyes never left the armed intruder. Luna, meanwhile, had somehow maneuvered herself to a position where she could observe all 6 pirates simultaneously, while remaining close to Brandon Torres. Her head moved in tiny increments, tracking each raider's location with the precision of a targeting system. The pirates, focused on their robbery and intimidation routine, paid no attention to the animals. Why would they? They were just pets, after all. You, the lead pirate said, pointing his weapon at Amy Kowalski. Jewelry and credits. Now. Kowalski began slowly reaching for her personal effects, her movements deliberate and unthreatening. Rex shifted slightly, maintaining his position between her and the pirate, but otherwise showed no reaction. Hurry up, the pirate snarled, taking a step closer and raising his weapon. I do not have all rotation. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. One moment he was a calm, well-behaved animal companion. The next, he was something else entirely. His lips pulled back to reveal teeth that suddenly seemed much larger and sharper than I remembered. A low growl emerged from his throat, a sound that seemed to resonate through the deck plating itself. The pirate actually took a step backward. What the void is wrong with your pet? He demanded. Nothing, Kowalski replied calmly. He is just protecting his family. The pirate laughed, though it sounded forced. Your pet is going to protect you? From armed professionals? That is the funniest thing I have heard all rotation. He raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Kowalski's chest. Call off your animal, or I will show you exactly how effective biological security systems are against plasma rifles. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about humans and their companion animals. Rex did not attack. Instead, he did something far more sophisticated. He barked. 3 sharp, distinct sounds that echoed through the cargo bay. Immediately, Luna responded with her own vocalization, a series of yips and barks that seemed to follow a specific pattern. Then from somewhere else in the station, I heard answering calls. Dozens of them. The pirates looked around nervously. What are they doing? One of them asked. Brandon Torres smiled. And for the first time since I had met him, the expression was not entirely friendly. They are calling for backup. Not exactly, Torres replied. Luna, alert Protocol 7. Luna immediately began a rapid series of barks, each one distinct and purposeful. The pattern repeated 3 times, then stopped. Clever? The pirate said sarcastically. Your animals can make noise. I am terrified. That was when the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, casting eerie shadows throughout the cargo bay. But in that brief moment of darkness, everything had changed. The pirates were no longer in control of the situation, though they did not realize it yet. Rex had moved, Luna had moved, and from the sounds echoing through the station's ventilation system, every other animal the humans had brought was moving too. They had trapped themselves in a confined space with a pack. What followed in the next few minutes redefined my understanding of tactical coordination, species intelligence, and the sheer audacity of creatures I had dismissed as emotional crutches. The lead pirate, growing increasingly nervous as strange sounds echoed through the ventilation system, made the fatal mistake of pointing his plasma rifle directly at Amy Kowalski's head. Enough games, he snarled. I want those diplomatic codes, or your pet owner becomes space debris. One moment he was standing calmly beside Kowalski. The next, he was airborne, 70 pounds of muscle and fury launching himself at the pirate's weapon arm. The plasma rifle discharged wildly, sending a bolt of superheated energy into the cargo bay ceiling. Shoot it! Shoot the animal! The lead pirate shrieked, trying desperately to shake off his 4-legged attacker. 2 other pirates raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the cargo bay was plunged into complete darkness. Not emergency lighting failure, but total, coordinated blackout. In the darkness, chaos erupted. I heard the distinctive sound of Luna barking what I now realize were tactical commands. Short, sharp vocalizations that seemed to convey specific information. From somewhere in the station's depths, dozens of voices answered, each one distinct, each one purposeful. The pirate's weapon lights activated, cutting through the darkness with narrow beams. But they were no longer hunting helpless civilians. They were being hunted. A plasma bolt fired wildly into the darkness, followed by a human curse. They are everywhere. How are there so many of them? Through the chaos I heard Brandon Torres's voice, calm and controlled. "Luna, search and rescue protocol. Find the others." Luna disappeared into the darkness, moving with purpose through what should have been an impossible maze of panicking beings and hostile threats. But somehow, impossibly, she seemed to know exactly where she was going. The emergency lighting flickered back on, revealing a scene that defied everything I thought I understood about animal behavior. Rex still had the lead pirate pinned, though the raider was now unconscious from shock rather than injury. 3 other pirates were backing toward the sealed doors, their weapons trained on shadows that seemed to move independently. "What kind of animals are these?" one of them whispered. Torres smiled grimly. "The kind that evolved hunting in packs." That was when the real coordination began. Quartermaster A's voice followed, breathless with excitement. "Admiral, you need to see this. The human animals are chewing through the pirates' communication cables. They are working together, sir. They are working together." From Section 12, another report. The black and white creature led us directly to the trapped Colonian younglings. Somehow it knew exactly where to find them, through 3 levels of damaged corridors. The pirates in our cargo bay were beginning to panic. Their leader was unconscious. Their communication equipment was apparently being systematically destroyed throughout the station, and they were facing an enemy they had never encountered before. "Fall back," one of them ordered. "Fall back to the ships." But falling back required getting past Rex, who had positioned himself between the pirates and the only exit. The German shepherd stood perfectly still, but his message was clear. No one was leaving without permission. Luna reappeared, leading a group of human security personnel who had somehow navigated the damaged sections of the station. Behind her trotted 2 other dogs I had not seen before, a golden-colored creature and something that looked like a smaller version of Rex. Max found the pirates' command center. One of the security officers reported to Torres. Bell disabled their jamming equipment by chewing through the primary power coupling. I stared at the golden creature, Max, who sat calmly beside the security officer with what appeared to be pieces of fiber optic cable still hanging from his mouth. "How?" I managed to ask, my scientific training finally overriding my shock. "How are they coordinating across the entire station?" Amy Kowalski, who had remained remarkably calm throughout the entire ordeal, looked at me with something approaching pity. "They are not just coordinating, Moran. They are communicating. Every bark, every movement, every action is purposeful. They have been sharing information, developing strategy, and executing tactical responses." The remaining pirates were backing toward the walls now, their weapons lowered in defeat. One of them looked around the cargo bay with genuine bewilderment. "We have raided hundreds of stations, fought security forces from dozens of species, but this we have never seen anything like this." Rex finally stepped away from the unconscious leader, allowing the human security team to secure the prisoners, but he maintained his alert posture, ready to respond if needed. Judge Quintara's voice followed, shaken but trying to maintain official composure. "Can someone please explain how non-sentient animals manage to coordinate a station-wide counterattack?" Brandon Torres looked at Rex, who gazed back with what I swear was satisfaction. "Judge," he said quietly, "maybe it is time we discussed what you really mean by non-sentient." As the security teams led the defeated pirates away, I realized that everything we thought we knew about human companion animals had been catastrophically wrong. These were not pets. They were not emotional support devices. They were not simple, conditioned creatures responding to basic stimuli. And we had just witnessed what happens when you threaten their pack. The medical bay on Station Omega-7 had seen its share of emergency cases over the years, but I doubt it had ever hosted quite so unusual a patient as Rex, who lay on an examination table designed for bipedal humanoids, while a bewildered Colonian medic attempted to treat a plasma burn on his left shoulder. "Hold still," Dr. Yalox muttered, her forearms working with practiced efficiency despite her obvious confusion about treating a non-standard anatomy. "I have never worked on a what-did-you-call-it? German Shepherd." Amy Kowalski sat beside the table, one hand gently stroking Rex's head while he remained perfectly motionless for the medical procedure. What struck me most profoundly was not the dog's remarkable composure under treatment, but the expression on Kowalski's face. I had observed thousands of interspecies interactions during my career, documented countless emotional responses across dozens of different physiologies. "You saved my life," she whispered to Rex, her voice thick with emotion. "You beautiful, brave, impossible creature, you saved my life." Rex turned his head slightly, maintaining eye contact with his human, while Dr. Yilox applied regenerative gel to his wound. That look, that moment of connection between two entirely different species, contained more genuine affection than I had witnessed in decades of diplomatic summits. Admiral Vashi entered the medical bay as the treatment concluded, his three heads held lower than usual in what I recognized as a gesture of contrition among his people. "Commander Marley," he began, his metallic voice subdued, "I owe you and your companions a formal apology. My earlier statements were ignorant and offensive. I failed to recognize the true nature of these remarkable beings." Commander Marley nodded graciously. "Admiral, no offense was taken. Cultural misunderstandings are why we are here after all." "No," Vashi insisted, his six eyes focused on Rex with newfound respect. "What I witnessed today was not cultural difference. It was tactical brilliance, coordinated strategy and loyalty that transcends species barriers." General Krafnog chose that moment to lumber into the medical bay, his massive bulk somehow managing to appear sheepish. Behind him trotted Luna, who had apparently appointed herself as his escort during his journey through the station's medical section. "Mr. Torres," the Klaxon general rumbled, his voice lacking its usual bombastic confidence, "I have spent 40 rotations studying military tactics across the galaxy. I have commanded fleets in 3 major conflicts and trained security forces for dozens of species. What your animals accomplished today was nothing short of extraordinary." He gestured toward Luna, who sat calmly beside him despite being dwarfed by his enormous frame. "This creature led rescue teams through damaged sections of the station using nothing but scent tracking and spatial memory. She coordinated with forces she had never worked with before, using communication methods I do not even understand." "That is not conditioning, Commander. That is intelligent." Judge Quintara arrived as Dr. Yalox finished her work, her elongated frame moving with unusual haste. "I have been in communication with the Galactic Council regarding today's events," she announced. "After reviewing the security footage and witness testimonies, we are prepared to make an entrecedents decision." She activated a holographic display that showed the official council seal. Effective immediately, the Galactic Council formally recognizes human companion animals as sentient partners, rather than biological cargo. They will be afforded all rights and protections normally reserved for diplomatic personnel. The humans exchanged glances, their expressions mixing surprise with satisfaction. "Thank you, Judge," Commander Mully said. "Though I suspect Rex and Luna would be more interested in a good meal than official recognition." As if summoned by the mention of food, several other dogs appeared in the medical bay doorway. I recognized Max, the golden creature who had disabled the pirates' equipment, along with Bell and 2 others whose names I had not yet learned. They moved with the casual confidence of beings who had just successfully defended their territory. But it was what happened next that truly changed my perspective on human-animal relationships. Mortin, my insufferably arrogant colleague, sat slumped in a corner of the medical bay, clearly suffering from post-traumatic stress after his first experience with genuine violence. His usual condescending demeanor had been replaced by the 1,000-meter stare common to beings who had confronted their own mortality. Belle, the smaller dog who resembled Rex, approached him slowly and deliberately. Without any command or encouragement from the humans, she simply sat beside him and rested her head against his arm. The change in Mortin was immediate and profound. His breathing slowed, his trembling stopped, and for the first time since the attack, he seemed to find some measure of peace. He looked down at Belle with wonder, then up at the assembled humans with something approaching humility. "She knows," he whispered. "Somehow she knows exactly what I need." Amy Kowalski smiled, the first truly relaxed expression I had seen from her all rotation. "That is what they do, Mortin. They read emotions, respond to distress, and provide comfort when it is needed most. They have been doing it for thousands of years. Brandon Torres added quietly, "We did not train them to be warriors, though they can fight when necessary. We did not program them to be rescuers, though they will risk their lives to save others. We simply gave them our love, our trust, and our commitment to care for them as they care for us." As I watched the scene unfold, beings from half a dozen different species interacting peacefully with creatures we had dismissed as mere pets just hours before, I finally understood what we had missed. The humans had not brought animals to space because they were weak or dependent. They had brought them because they understood something the rest of us had forgotten in our rush toward technological advancement and galactic civilization. They understood that intelligence comes in many forms, that loyalty transcends species boundaries, that the bonds forged between different kinds of consciousness can create something stronger than the sum of its parts. The humans had not brought pets to space. They had brought family. And as I filed my final report on the events at Station Omega 7, I realized that the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating the power of that bond. Never threaten a human's dog. You might not survive the education that follows.